What do you do when someone tries to provoke you? Insults, disrespect, or needless irritation? Most people react showing weakness. But Niccolò Machiavelli would tell you, the one who is easily bothered has already surrendered power. Today, we will uncover why letting nothing disturb you is the mark of true strength and how this principle can shield your authority, respect, and control. Welcome to Machiavellian philosophy, where we strip away illusions and study the raw, unfiltered strategies of power. In this lesson, we explore a timeless rule: never let anyone bother you. Machiavelli understood that rulers and men of ambition lose more from their reactions than from the offense itself. To remain unshaken is not just wisdom, it is domination. Machiavelli understood a truth most men ignore: the moment you allow someone to provoke you, you have already surrendered your power. Your reaction is a confession. It tells the world where you are vulnerable, what words can pierce you, and what gestures can shake your pride. In the game of power, this is fatal. To react is to reveal, and to reveal is to give others the tools to control you. Consider the man who loses his temper at the smallest insult. His enemy may not be stronger, richer, or wiser, yet with only a few words he can summon rage, and that rage leads to reckless decisions. An insult shouted in the streets may cause him to lash out, only to find himself punished by law or scorned by witnesses. His anger does not wound his enemy, it wounds him. The weak believe they are showing strength when they respond with fury. In truth, they are announcing their weakness to the entire world. Machiavelli would remind us that true rulers, true leaders, keep their emotions locked within their own walls. When a prince is mocked, he does not rush to argue. He does not waste his dignity shouting at fools. He remains silent, for silence is heavier than anger. The ability to stay unmoved under attack projects something far greater than strength. It projects inevitability, the image of a man who cannot be shaken, and men fear what they cannot shake. Why is this so important? Because every enemy is hunting for your reaction. They do not need to defeat you directly. They need only to discover where your pride bleeds. The rival who sees you redden at a jest knows he can unravel you. The subordinate who watches you fume at criticism knows he can control you with a word. They do not need armies. They need only your weakness. The smallest irritation, multiplied over time, becomes a chain that binds you, and you will not even see the shackles being forged. Therefore, Machiavelli counsels us: conceal your inner fire. To feel anger is human, but to display it is submission. Hold your rage as a weapon in reserve, never as a reflex. The ruler who shows fury loses command of himself, and once you lose command of yourself, others will swiftly take command of you. The man who insults you has not harmed you. It is your visible anger that does the damage. Think of the lion. The lion does not roar at every bird that caws above his head. He saves his power for the prey that matters. Likewise, the powerful man does not waste his dignity reacting to every slight. He remains still, and his stillness becomes a warning. Those who seek to provoke him grow uneasy, for they cannot read his mind, they cannot measure his heart, and in their uncertainty, they hesitate. And hesitation, in the world of conflict, is defeat. Reaction reveals weakness, because it uncovers what you cannot control. Indifference, however, creates a mask of strength. When the world believes you are untouchable, it stops trying to reach for your nerves, and instead begins to treat you as something beyond ordinary men. To react is to descend to their level. To remain unmoved is to rise above them. Machiavelli teaches that every conflict, every conversation, every act of power is not about what is said, but about who defines the terms. To control the frame is to control the game. The man who dictates the emotional atmosphere of an encounter already holds victory in his hands. If you allow your opponent to set the tone, you are playing by his rules, and in that arena, you have already begun to lose. Power does not belong to the one who shouts the loudest, but to the one who decides what the shouting means. Imagine two men in dispute. One raises his voice, red with anger, spitting accusations. The other remains calm, measured, and silent. Who commands the respect of the crowd? Not the man roaring like a beast, but the one who appears above the chaos. His silence becomes an invisible crown. His composure reframes the scene. The angry one becomes a fool. The calm one becomes a ruler. The frame has shifted, the game is his. This principle extends beyond arguments into every domain of power. In politics, the ruler who panics in crisis convinces his people the state is crumbling. But the ruler who speaks with steadiness, even in disaster, convinces his people that the storm is under control. The crisis may be the same, but the frame is different, and the frame defines the truth. Men believe not in facts, but in the manner in which those facts are delivered. Whoever commands that manner commands belief itself. Your enemies will always attempt to provoke you. They want you flustered, emotional, dragged into their theater, where they can play the lead role. They will mock, They will laugh. They will test the limits of your patience. Here is where the wise man reveals his mastery. He refuses to enter their theater. He forces them into his. If they scream, he does not scream back. If they provoke, he does not protest. He smiles, perhaps even nods, as if he alone knows a secret hidden from the rest. And this secret is power. For the moment you make the other man wonder why his words cannot move you, you have reversed the game. He sought to expose your weakness, and instead you have exposed his desperation. The essence of framing is simple: do not be reactive, be directive. Instead of answering their accusations, redefine the conversation. Instead of defending yourself, question their motives. Instead of fighting where they strike, shift the ground beneath their feet. Machiavelli would remind us that battles are not always won by swords, but by deciding where the battle is fought. The man who controls the battlefield dictates the outcome before the fight begins. And so it is in daily life. The colleague who tries to embarrass you with a sharp comment is not truly attacking your worth, but attempting to set the frame that he is superior. If you snap back, you accept his frame. If you laugh calmly, if you appear untouched, the frame dissolves. Now he looks petty and you appear elevated. You did not need to prove your worth. You only needed to control the atmosphere in which worth was judged. Control the frame, control the game. This is not merely defense. It is offense of the highest order. It is power without effort, victory without battle. When you hold the frame, others unconsciously bend to it. They find themselves adjusting their tone, moderating their words, seeking your approval, as if you were the sun around which they orbit. And all of this happens without you lifting a sword or raising your voice, because the man who controls perception controls reality itself. Machiavelli understood a truth that burns deeper than anger. Nothing enrages your enemy more than your indifference. To meet insult with fury is to honor it, to show that the words reached you, that they carried weight. But to meet insult with silence, with calm disregard, is to make the offender invisible. It is to declare without words, you are beneath my notice. And for the small, the petty, the envious, there is no wound greater than being ignored. When someone mocks you, they are fishing for a reaction. They seek the satisfaction of knowing they can stir your blood, that they can provoke your pride. If you snap back, you have rewarded them. If you argue, you have joined their theater, making them an equal participant in your drama. If you remain unmoved, if you let their words fall into the air like ash that never touches you, you create a silence louder than any insult. You teach them that their voice carries no weight in your world. This silence is not weakness. It is strategy. The man who answers every provocation reveals that he is easily commanded. The man who answers none makes himself untouchable. And when a man is untouchable, others begin to whisper that he is beyond the reach of ordinary mortals. His composure becomes his shield, his indifference becomes his sword. He does not fight with words, for he does not need to. His refusal to descend into the mud makes his enemies drown in it alone. Consider the enemy who plots against you. He hurls accusations, he spreads slander, he claws at your reputation. If you rush to defend yourself, you confirm that his words have power. The very act of response validates his attack. If you dismiss him without a glance, if you act as though his voice never existed, he begins to suffocate in his own noise. His energy spent, his anger festers, but he cannot draw you into the arena. He swings his sword into shadows, and the crowd begins to laugh not at you, but at him. For nothing makes a man appear smaller than his failure to provoke a giant. Indifference is not cowardice. It is superiority. It is to signal that the barking dog is not a threat, but a background noise. And what is background noise but something unworthy of focus? The more you appear unbothered, the more your enemies burn with frustration. They crave acknowledgement, for acknowledgement is power. When you deny them this, you strip them of significance. You deny them existence. And there is no greater insult to a man than to tell him he does not exist in your world. In the courts of princes, this truth was deadly. A rival might hope to bait the ruler with slander, forcing him into rash action, into a duel of pride. But the prince who ignored such bait, who showed no disturbance, soon found that his rivals collapsed under their own schemes. They became desperate, louder, more reckless, exposing their own weakness. Indifference turned their fire into smoke, until the people themselves grew weary of their noise. The prince remained untouched, above the fray, his silence more powerful than 1,000 denials. You see, anger locks you in combat with your enemy, but indifference erases him from the battlefield entirely. To ignore is not to surrender, it is to dominate by absence. It is to declare, without lifting a hand or uttering a word, that the one who sought to wound you is too insignificant to matter. And when your enemies realize they cannot disturb you, when they discover that their weapons dissolve in the air around you, They are left with nothing but their own bitterness, which devours them from within. Machiavelli knew that the greatest danger to a ruler is not the force of his enemies, but the force of his own emotions. Anger, once unleashed without purpose, blinds the mind, weakens judgment, and often destroys more than it protects. But when wrath is held in reserve, when it is caged and sharpened like a weapon, it becomes one of the most terrifying instruments of power. Difference between ruin and mastery lies in whether your wrath serves you, or whether you serve your wrath. Most men are slaves to their tempers. An insult, a slight, petty inconvenience is enough to set them aflame. They strike in rage, not in reason, and in their fury they reveal their weakness to all who watch. A ruler who lashes out in anger proves he has been touched, proves he has lost command of himself. He may destroy his target, yes, he destroys himself in the eyes of the crowd. Men will whisper that he is unstable, fragile, unfit to be obeyed. His wrath, uncontrolled, erodes his authority faster than any enemy's attack. The wise prince does not waste his fury on trifles. He hides it, suppresses it, allows the world to think him calm, even indifferent. But beneath this mask he studies, he waits, he plans. For wrath, when used sparingly and with precision, has the force of thunder. When unleashed at the right moment, not from impulse but from strategy, it can shatter enemies, silence rivals, and remind all who watch that his power is not to be tested lightly. What men fear most is not constant rage. It is the sudden, deliberate strike of one who seemed untouchable until the very moment he chose to act. Think of the general who watches his soldiers mocked by the enemy across the field. A lesser man charges at once, swept by humiliation, and his army falls into an ambush. But the seasoned commander holds his anger. He waits, he watches, he chooses the hour of battle carefully. When he finally unleashes his fury, it is not born of insult but of calculation. His wrath becomes strategy, and his strategy becomes victory. The same is true in the affairs of men. If a rival at court undermines you with whispers, do not rush to strike him down in a storm of rage. You only prove that he has power over you. Instead, let him believe his schemes are working. Let him dig his hole deeper. Then, when the time is ripe, reveal your wrath as judgment, not as emotion. It will not appear as petty vengeance but as justice, and the people will stand with you, believing your strike to be necessary, not impulsive. The key is control. Wrath that erupts like fire in dry grass burns out quickly and leaves only ashes. But wrath that is stored, directed, and released like a blade strikes clean, sharp, and unforgettable. It teaches others not merely that you can be angered, but that your anger, when it comes, carries consequences too great to risk. This transforms wrath from a weakness into a deterrent. Men will think twice before provoking the one who never erupts without purpose, for they know that if his fury ever comes, it will come as a calculated punishment, not a reckless outburst. Reserve your wrath for strategy, not emotion. To govern others, you must first govern yourself. When anger controls you, you are a puppet in your enemy's hand. When you control anger, you hold a weapon hidden in your own, and it is the hidden weapon, revealed only when it serves your design, that keeps men in awe and your power intact. Machiavelli knew that the battlefield of power is not fought only in courts, in armies, or in politics. The first and greatest battlefield lies within the self. A man who cannot command his own impulses, his desires, his fears, his pride, such a man will never command others. He will be governed not by reason but by emotion, not by calculation but by instinct. And to be ruled by instinct is to be ruled by weakness. To master yourself is to master others, for men instinctively follow those who seem to stand above the storms that consume ordinary hearts. Think of the leader who trembles in uncertainty. His men see his hesitation, and suddenly they too begin to doubt. Fear, like a plague, spreads from him into the souls of his followers. Now imagine a leader who, even in the darkest hour, projects calm control. He may feel fear, but he does not show it. He governs himself so that his men believe the battle is already theirs. In this way, self-mastery becomes the power to shape the emotions of others. When you control yourself, you control the atmosphere around you, and men bend to the gravity of your composure. The man who cannot govern his anger becomes a puppet to those who can provoke him. The man who cannot govern his pride will chase every insult until his energy is drained and his focus lost. The man who cannot govern his greed becomes an easy target for bribes and temptations, his loyalties sold for crumbs. The man who governs all these within himself becomes unassailable. He does not reveal where he can be bought, provoked, or broken. Others may test him, but they will find only silence, patience, and restraint. This silence unnerves them, for they realize he cannot be manipulated as easily as the rest. Machiavelli observed that men crave rulers who appear larger than life. And what is larger than life but the man who seems untouched by the weaknesses that enslave ordinary mortals? While others rage, he remains composed. While others panic, he remains steady. While others lust for immediate pleasures, he denies himself until it serves his strategy. Such discipline creates an aura of invincibility. The people may not understand why they trust him, but they feel it instinctively. This man is not like the rest. His control over himself suggests that he is destined to control the fate of others. To master yourself is also to gain freedom. A man who does not control his impulses is not free. He is chained to them. He thinks he is acting by choice, but in truth he is dragged by invisible forces: his anger, his envy, his fear. These forces are seen by all who watch him, and his enemies exploit them like cracks in stone. But when a man closes those cracks, when he becomes master of his inner kingdom, he denies his enemies their weapons. He becomes a fortress with no gate, a tower with no weakness to strike. Consider how quickly power shifts when one man remains unshaken while the other is visibly consumed. A ruler who cannot hide his jealousy reveals where he can be attacked. Commander who cannot control his panic dooms his army before swords are drawn. But the man who governs himself creates a mirror in which others see their own fragility. They sense that he is untouchable, and in their uncertainty, they submit. For men by nature seek stability, and stability can only be found in the one who has mastered himself completely. This mastery is not born overnight. It is forged daily in silence. When you deny yourself needless indulgence, when you withhold your reaction, when you learn to carry the burden of restraint. Every time you conquer yourself, you sharpen your authority. And in time, others feel it around you. They adjust their tone, they soften their defiance, they begin to defer without knowing why. It is not your words that command them, but the unseen weight of your discipline. They obey not the man, but the force within the man, the proof that he is governed by no master except himself. Machiavelli teaches us that power is not only what you hold in your hands, but what others believe you hold. Men do not merely obey strength, they obey the illusion of strength, the impression that one cannot be moved, cannot be shaken, cannot be touched. This is the aura of the untouchable. And to cultivate this aura is to elevate yourself above ordinary men, so that even before a battle begins, your enemies hesitate, fearing that your spirit is beyond their reach. What makes a man untouchable? Not his wealth, for riches can be seized. Not his armies, for armies can be defeated. It is the perception that nothing penetrates him, that insults do not wound, that setbacks do not bend him, that schemes cannot ensnare him. When others see that he does not flinch, they begin to whisper that he is something more than human, as if fortune itself protects him. This whisper grows into belief, and belief is the strongest foundation of power. For men are guided not by truth, but by what they imagine to be true. And if they imagine you cannot be broken, they will treat you as unbreakable. Picture a ruler surrounded by rivals who wait for any sign of weakness. A lesser man groans under pressure, lashes out in anger, complains of his burden, but the untouchable man shows no crack. He smiles when others expect fear. He remains calm when others expect panic. He speaks with clarity when others are lost in confusion. This composure creates an aura, and this aura becomes armor. Even his rivals begin to doubt their own strength, because how can one defeat a man who appears immune to defeat itself? The aura of the untouchable is not given, it is crafted. It is built in silence through self-mastery, through restraint, through the careful choice of when to act and when to remain still. Every moment of indifference to provocation, every refusal to show fear, every instance where you conceal your pain behind composure, adds another layer to the myth. And soon the myth itself becomes reality, for perception governs the actions of men more than truth ever could. Enemies may try to strike, but when their blows seem to glance off without effect, they begin to question themselves. Their frustration grows, and frustration leads to mistakes. They strike harder, more recklessly, exposing their own weaknesses, while you remain still, untouchable, as if nothing could disturb your position. In this way, your lack of visible reaction becomes more powerful than any sword. Men grow afraid not of what you will do, but of what you might do, and this uncertainty chains them in hesitation. The aura also extends beyond enemies. Your allies, your followers, your subjects. When they see you unmoved, they feel safe in your shadow. They believe that standing with you is standing with strength itself. This belief deepens their loyalty because people cling to what appears solid when the world around them trembles. A man who shows fragility invites doubt. A man who shows invulnerability inspires devotion. The untouchable figure becomes a pillar others lean on, and from this reliance his authority only grows. There is no greater force than the impression that you cannot be touched. It makes others cautious, hesitant, unwilling to test your limits. They begin to guard their words around you, measure their tone, adjust their behavior, all without you commanding a single thing. This is the silent power Machiavelli admired, kind that bends men without force, that controls without visible chains, that rules not only through fear but through awe. And awe is far more enduring, for it transforms resistance into submission before resistance can even form. Machiavelli reveals that the greatest victory is not won with swords, but with the mind. To remain unbothered, to never let others disturb your composure, is to seize the highest form of power. We have seen how reaction reveals weakness, how controlling the frame commands the game, how indifference wounds deeper than anger, how wrath must be reserved for strategy, how self-mastery grants dominion over others, and how the aura of the untouchable transforms men into legends. These are not lessons of comfort, but of dominance. For the one who is unmoved cannot be controlled, the one who is unshaken cannot be defeated, and the one who is untouchable stands above all. Remember this: the world belongs not to those who shout the loudest, but to those who cannot be broken, to those who refuse to let anyone, great or small, disturb the throne of their mind.